Guys, I'm here to get into a character analysis of Young Blood, which was directed by Paul Thomas Anderson, released in the year 2007. And by contrast of a lot of his earlier projects, this is like way more of an introverted note. Like Paul Thomas Anderson's primarily revolving around all of this around one character, Daniel Day-Lewis, and then Paul Dano is kind of like the one main side character. And there's a bunch of side characters, but just very minimal by contrast to how much attention to detail is on Daniel Day-Lewis and Paul Dano's parts. But Davis just portrays the perfect sort of icy, kind of introverted sort of character who's very fascinating in the opening moments. And no dialogue. It seems like he's kind of got the most mystique value, and it seems like he's at his most enjoyable element whenever there's no dialogue, as Day-Lewis is just very into just his deeds. And it's really fascinating to see how he builds up into such like just devastating territory. Like I would say a lot of the scenes of him hunting with his son are just they just feel kind of like there's just an extreme amount of melancholy to it. The way that Daniel Day-Lewis just does business, but he's just generally sort of a unpleasant kind of personality, and it just sort of gets more psychopathic as this film progresses. But it's very slow burner, very subtle how it gets there. You kind of see how Day-Lewis does have like some strengths in his personality as well. Like, he's pretty good at handling. He's a great businessman. He handles things really well. He's able to stand for some mistreatment that happens in the small town, but otherwise very stubborn personality. He ends up just literally abandoning his child once he's no longer of an advantage to him. And the stepson, really, but then there's this sort of complicated angle of like, well, he really loves him through all, but he just doesn't know how to go on with that. You have this kid, Kevin and Jay O'Connor, who's in here halfway, who claims to be his half brother. He has a cameo in this and The Mask, dude. Day-Lewis just builds up so much hatred, which just sort of makes him into an insane businessman. There's so many incredible scenes where he's just doing business with. There's two scenes in particular with like David Warshawski, where he's just Day-Lewis is acting like a maniac, and this guy just like while Day-Lewis is just acting like about the most cocky, frustrating person, Warshawski just kind of tolerates it. But yeah, Day-Lewis just really turns into a psychopathic maniac through all of this. Yeah, it's. I think the scene where he meets Colton Woodward's one of my all-time favorites too. He's out in the woods after a big significant moment, and then that's just like he's just led into a church where it just ends up being an overbearingly lonely sort of position. It's like his son ends up there's like almost so much like the son meets a girl and starts a business, and that's the thing. This is a very male-dominant project. This is extremely very extreme, and this kind of turns into a big rivalry between him and Paul Dano. And what I noticed about the ending of this, that it really hit something in my latest viewing, is like the whole final sequence. It kind of paces out like that of a middle school gym bully sequence, and it's very disturbing, very haunting, particularly the tone that it's on. It's so subtle that it kind of has it seems more disturbing and uncomfortable with age. And Paul Dano, he's just very offbeat in how he plays both of the sibling characters. That's very offbeat for Paul Thomas Anderson to go for that angle. But Day-Lewis just meets with him, and tension just subtly is in the air right from the beginning. There's something of a rooted hatred. Like you can see that Day-Lewis kind of senses something of a false prophet living in Dano, and just heat gradually escalates to just something massive, essentially a bullying kind of thing. Like I think the scene where they're out in the field, and Day-Lewis is bullying Dano is just like particularly disturbing. It's just such an ugly scenario as he's like being dragged in the mud and all that. And then Dano ends up kind of taking all that hatred out on his family, and then. Yeah, there's just a lot of there's just intense frustration. Like after Dano baptizes Day-Lewis, like you see Day-Lewis subtly whispers something into Dano's ear, which just provokes something of an overwhelmingly dreadful reaction. And this is just really a mesmerizingly original sort of project all throughout, which just generally just feels all around very gloomy and melancholic. I'd say these landscape shots are some of P.T. Anderson's greatest moments, as they kind of remind me a lot of how Terrence Malick would make world building. This whole project just goes beyond words.